Ms. Kishner, tell us more about the Construction Industries Federation, CIF.
Thank you, Blanche. The Construction Industries Federation is essentially an employers' organization that represents companies that operate in the construction industry. And what we're doing as an organization, we represent the interest of the industry, particularly when we communicate with government. Also, it's very important for us to look at the fair practices within the industry, as well as to look at effective relations between the employer as well as the union and the workers within the industry. And also very important is the question of the development of skills and capacity building within the industry.
And who are your members?
We have members across the board, contractors, SMEs, some of the smaller contractors, electricians, plumbers, anybody that essentially works within the industry, in the building industry and construction industry. We've got currently about 420 members. Of those, just about half are SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises, and we have also a third of those about contractors. And we have actually seen in the last 4 years an increase of membership, that we have now 4 times as many as we had 4 years ago. So it's increasing drastically, maybe because of increased activity, but the industry is also buoyant. And of course, there are also increasing concerns that we need to address as an organization that affect the industry, such as foreign competition.
Now, speaking of increase in activities in the construction industry, recently the National Planning Commission also alluded that it is one of the industries which has benefited a lot from this TPAC program. And you recently had a strategic planning session. What are some of your objectives to keep on increasing activities in the industry?
Yes, thank you. We've had recently a strategic planning meeting, like you said. One of the key goals we have is raising the awareness of the industry as a whole. We need to make more people aware, more stakeholders aware of the issues that affect the industry, as well as inform the stakeholders about our members, who essentially would have to adhere to the code of conduct in the industry, or code of conduct. It's also very important that we increase our accessibility, that people can approach us more quickly and more easily. And we're looking at setting up offices or have representatives within the region in the north as well as at the coast. Another goal is as well to increase the capacity building, as I mentioned before, skills development, and this can be established, obviously the focus on SMEs. Also what we'd like to achieve is greater people would make use of the VAT levy and also invest in training. And the CIF is also looking at the development of an internship policy, so that we have people that leave tertiary educations or institutions essentially, that they find places within the workplace and have the first step into the market.
Now that obviously boils down to creating more opportunities also in the industry. What are some of the opportunities that are currently there?
We would find that the industry, I mean, obviously the industry is buoyant. It is a cyclical, industry as an economy would be, but at the moment we experience a growth of about 9% in the industry, and this is expected for a couple of years. And this is not only through, capital projects, infrastructure development, and essentially the expansionary policy that government has implemented, also private sector investment. All of that contributes to a very strong sector, and that sector can also have a multiplying effect on other sectors if everything works well. For example, manufacturing of building supplies, ideally we should see that as well. The transport sector, financial services, and it should increase employment within the industry. On the flip side, we have many projects that are running simultaneously, and that would mean many projects require a lot of capacity. And if we create that many opportunities, we also not only creating the opportunities for Namibian companies, but also for foreign companies to operate within our industry, within our economy. So that needs to be very carefully monitored so that we ensure that Namibians also get the fair share.
Now, what are the possible threats then?
Essentially that we are creating, so many opportunities have been created, and that you would find that in order to supply, you would find that also foreign companies are able to operate in the market. And what a critical factor is here that we would find that Namibians are being involved, if not directly as contractors, but then also as subcontractors as well. And that we really see a greater Namibianization.
Now, speaking of which, that boils down to public procurement. What is CIF's view on it? Any dangers, opportunities with regard to public procurement to Namibianize the industry?
Public procurement has always been on our agenda, especially for the last few years. It is very important, particularly as we see so much investment into capital projects. I think we should also recognize that some changes have taken place, that we would see more Namibian companies are getting contracts as well as SMEs. There is apparently now a directive with the tender board, the Ministry of Finance, where SMEs would be entitled for projects up to 20 million, from 20 million to 60 million. It's for Namibian companies, and for projects above 60 million, these would be also allowed for foreign companies. Foreign entities would be allowed to tender, provided that they are joint venture with Namibian companies. But the latter, it is very important that we also focus there, that it does not necessarily lead to empowerment. It might lead to, a few individuals, having the fair share, but we need to ensure that we have a sustainable industry, that we build capacity as well, and focus really on skills development as well. What is very important, that we have a Procurement Act. There is a new one in the pipeline, but it really needs to go through Parliament, and it needs to be gazetted so it becomes legislation. This would allow us that we have a uniform procedures across government, with its central, regional or local, as well as with the state-owned enterprises. We need to see greater transparency, and a new Procurement Act would allow that, and that would also be in the interest of the tender board themselves. It's also very important that we see disclosure of interests, and that would mean members of the tender board, but also alternate members, but not only those that are on the tender board, those that are sitting on the ministerial procurement committees essentially would also have to disclose their interest, because public procurement is so delicate, really. And if we have so much going on, so many projects, it needs to be better regulated, and we need to have a good procurement procedure in place.
Now, can one say these are some of the strategies that CIF has employed to ensure that wholly owned Namibian construction companies are actively engaged in?
It was certainly one of our activities, and remains one of our activities focus, that we have more Namibian companies being involved in the industry, and that can be achieved through effective procurement policies, but also to ensure that if we have foreign companies involved, that we have Namibian companies being involved as subcontractors at the very least. It is also very important that we look at using Namibian manufactured material, building materials, and that is not necessarily all imported. That can also benefit Namibian companies. What is also critical to ensure that we have a level playing field across the industry is that regulation is being adhered to, government legislation is being adhered to, whether it's the Namibian legislation in terms of employment law, whether it is industry-specific regulation, but it needs to be also effectively policed on various construction sites so that we have a level playing field.
Now, speaking of leveling the playing field, you earlier talked about training skills, the VET levy. All of this, I think, is government's efforts in addressing the skills shortage. a part where construction industry mostly needs, comes in for is the skills part, as it needs practical knowledge. Now, tell us about the training facilities which CIF offers.
Yeah. That's one of our strategic goals as well, to focus on training and the development of capacity, and CIF as an organization has also sourced over 30 courses which are being offered over a period of 12 months to ensure the capacity building. So we focus a lot on delivery of training. And what is also very important, that companies also invest in training for the sustainable development of our industry. And we do charge a registration fee for those courses, and we are actually very keen to find sponsors for our training courses as well.
Okay, speaking of sustainable industry, another factor is quality. How does CIF ensure that?
I think as an industry, it's very important that clients are protected, whether it's essentially government or whether it is in the private sector, or indeed, people that have residential buildings. There needs to be a proper regulated environment. And this can be achieved through the establishment of National Planning and Construction Council. The CIF actually has been lobbying for many years for the establishment of the council. It has gone through Parliament. I believe it's being reverted back to the Ministry of Works and Transport. But what we need to see is the legislation, and that we have a council in place, because that would also allow that, for instance, projects are linked, the size of project is linked to size of company, which is not only in the interest of effective spending of government funds, but also in the interest of the companies themselves.
Okay, now government funds. Government policy affects many sectors. What is your view, the CIF view on that?
The government policy and strategies seem to be aligned with the goals of Vision 2030. And in particular, from the construction industry's point of view, we see a lot of investment, obviously, into infrastructure, and a lot is happening with regard to achieving Vision 2030. But it's also very important, policy is essentially on paper. What we need to see is that government authorities also look at the alignment of policies and effective coordination as well. It is also very important that the policies are, that they effectively lead to implementation. We need to have not only ideas, we need to move to action. And essentially what we want to achieve, strategies and policies that we see effective implementation. And I think that can be secured through the effective coordination also between the various authorities. But I think from an industry perspective, for us it's really critical that we have a Procurement Act in place that will affect the industry at large, but also in particular that the National Planning and Construction Council is being established.
Ms. Kishna, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much, Blanche.
That was Birbal Kishna talking about the growth in the construction industry as well as a greater need to regulate it. Business Today continues in a moment. Stay with us.